There are few things better for a spooky gaming session than a zombie game. You can pick your poison. First-person shooters, third-person action, 2D role-playing. The list of zombie games available to us now is almost endless. And yet, the series I return to frequently is Sega's sublime light gun franchise, The House of the Dead. So, you can imagine when I first saw Zombie Revenge in magazines as a teenager, the concept was incredibly exciting. A 3D beat-em-up by Sega set in the House of the Dead universe? I mean, how could you go wrong? On the surface, Zombie Revenge seems exactly like what you would want out of this sort of game. You are given the choice between 3 characters, each of whom have minor gameplay differences, but nothing major enough to cause any disputes between you and a friend if you're playing multiplayer. After a brief cutscene, you are thrown into the action.
Are we still following this guy?
He's the one making the zombies. To catch him, we have to follow. Let's go.
Initial impressions are good, with the game matching the presentation quality of many other high-end 3D titles from the era. The frame rate is a solid 60, and the game features some nice lighting and environmental effects to help boost the atmosphere of the game. One of the stages even takes you to the mansion itself, bringing along the music to boot. Character models look decent too, with many of the enemies being immediately identifiable as related to those from the mainline House of the Dead titles. There is even some minor battle damage seen on the enemies as you attack them, though not quite as extreme as in the light gun games. Voice acting is also perfectly in sync with the acting in the mainline games, with characters all sounding suitably distracted, and just a little bit dense.
Something important's coming up. The next instruction.
Said?
He's going to release the virus.
What?
So, the setup is all here for a fun, schlocky B-movie horror game. The problem comes when you try to actually control your character. All of a sudden, it feels like you're sending instructions to the character via walkie-talkie. Turning takes an age, maneuvering through groups of enemies is almost impossible, and the game's shifting camera makes environments tricky to safely navigate. Then come the attacks. Your character's equipped with a handgun by default, with the game encouraging you to use it liberally. This is another neat touch on paper, as it brings the game closer to the light gun games it draws from. You can charge your shots, and you can also focus enemies by waiting for the reticule to turn red before firing. But these strategies don't always mix well with the pace of the game's combat. You're able to find more powerful weapons like machine guns and flamethrowers, but the moments of empowerment they provide are fleeting and offer little relief from the relentless horde of enemies that the game throws at you. The lock-on system used by the game is also quite touchy. It isn't tight enough to reliably target individual high-value enemies in a group, but it's also not generous enough to allow you to do proper crowd control. Sadly, the hand-to-hand combat does not provide a reprieve. You need to be extremely careful with your positioning and direction when you start attacking, since most of the attack animations seem to be uncancelable. You'll often start trying to combo an enemy, only to face one of 2 scenarios. You hit the enemy with a full combo, but in the meantime, you've become surrounded and are going to take big damage. Or, you miss the enemy entirely and have to watch your character flail at thin air. In fact, it seems the only way to have these animations cancelled once you've committed to the string is if you get hit out of them. It all makes the game feel quite clunky and frustrating, which is all the more disappointing when Sega had seemingly solved most of these issues years beforehand with games like Die Hard Arcade. The game is actually at its best when you treat it more like a shooter than a brawler, but that belies the way the game is presented and how you are encouraged to play via the camera angles and third-person viewpoint. It should have been eminently possible to combine the smoothness of Die Hard Arcade's hand-to-hand action with the shooting mechanics on offer here, but it seems that, for whatever reason, this was not the case. There is still some mindless, short-lived fun to be had with the game, especially in multiplayer, but it should have been so much more. The arcade version was extremely successful financially, and Sega actually put a lot of effort into the Dreamcast port, including a variety of VMU-based minigames. Sometimes, the game really comes together and provides some great moments, such as the boss fights, but then you're quickly snapped back into reality when the game reverts to the mean. It's a real shame that the underlying gameplay can be so stilted and frustrating, as the bones are here for a real cult classic.